Hello everybody, welcome back to the Wrestling Guardians podcast. As ever, hope everybody's doing well out there in these troubling times. How are you in here? How's your last couple of weeks been?
Been a bit hectic, Dan, with work as usual, but hopefully all of our listeners are staying safe, and hope we can come through this stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a couple of weeks since we've actually recorded anything, but there's been quite a lot that's happened in the wrestling world. No doubt, plenty of things to talk about in our favourite promotion, AEW, and also, WWE are doing some fairly decent things as well, actually, at the moment. So, plenty to talk about today. So I know we're just over a week removed from it, but obviously AEW All Out 2020 is now in the books. Is that a good place for us to start, do you think, Anir?
Yeah, sounds good, Dan.
Yep, okay. So I think, to sum it up in a couple of words, this was an absolute shit show, was it? I think the first half of the show in particular was probably some of the most chaotic, ridiculous, and in many cases sort of dangerous and irresponsible sort of examples of wrestling that we've seen in a long time. Let's get into this show. What are your kind of initial thoughts on All Out as a pay-per-view?
I think we were discussing this just before we went on air, and it sort of got into that territory where it's almost so bad that it's laughable. And again, I mean, I know we're sort of building a rep as those guys who hate on AEW and we're the old men of pro wrestling or whatever. But this was genuinely a terrible show. I don't really know what positives you could come away from AEW All Out. I suppose you could say that the last two matches were passable, but apart from that, this was an exhibition of how not to book a wrestling show.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I know, like you say, we do talk a lot about AEW, but we're willing to admit when things are good. There's definitely some aspects of the product that we enjoy. But yeah, from start to finish as a pay-per-view, this was just god awful. And I think anyone who tries to defend it is just being a little bit too much of an apologist for AEW personally. And yeah, I think, we'll go into some of the matches in more detail in a second, but like you say, I think get into that territory where it's kind of almost so bad it's kind of entertaining, and like it may be kind of fun for us to sit here and talk about how bad we think the product is, but it is a bit of a shame when you think about it, because when it all came out and it first started, it was a very exciting thing for wrestling fans to have that kind of semi sort of competition again for the WWE. Something different, and I suppose we can't sort of argue that AEW hasn't taken some fans away from WWE. I mean, a lot of people are watching it. I know it hit over 1 million viewers last episode of Dynamite, which we have to note as well. But when you actually get down to the nitty gritty of the content, it's just so amateur in minor league, and I just think like, how long is this going to go on for? Like, are they still just going on that fact that they're the new kid on the block, so to speak, or do you think people are just so kind of attuned to the kind of gymnastics, like this sort of new way of wrestling, that they just don't see the wood from the trees almost? I don't know.
No, I definitely think they have found their niche to an extent, but they're sort of riding this wave of just being that alternative to WWE. And they cater to a very esoteric, very hardcore section of the wrestling fan base, which is disillusioned with the WWE product, and to them, it's sort of a situation where these people are so starved for anything that they'll eat stale bread, and in this case, AEW is their stale bread.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah. I mean, I suppose from my point of view, I mean, obviously, I know you didn't watch much of the New Japan product, but there was this kind of sort of slight rumble going on with some of the elite guys, and kind of like under the tutelage of people who kind of knew what they were doing, they were kind of putting out some half decent matches and sort of credible enough storylines that you thought, okay, maybe these guys know what they're doing. Maybe if they were ever to come to WWE, they would maybe change wrestling, change that wrestling landscape, or maybe if New Japan were to grow their products, then maybe they'd pose a genuine threat to WWE. The problem is, though, that they decided to go off on their own and form their own company. And for me, anyway, I think All Out is the kind of inevitable result of that happening. It's a bunch of sort of self-entitled wrestlers who think that just by jumping around and basically just using trampolines for 20 minutes is what we want as a wrestling fan base at the moment. And unfortunately, like I say, this is the product that we get, and it's such a huge disappointment from where we could have been maybe half a year ago.
This is essentially, I mean, we've seen this story before, right? This is essentially the end days of WCW, where you have like a bunch of wrestlers running riot and the inmates running the asylum. As you so correctly put it, Dan, these guys are just indulging themselves and doing whatever they want to give themselves a kick. And I'm not sure if they're not willing to do it, or this is what they think good professional wrestling is. But whatever the case, we are not getting good professional wrestling from AEW on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think, and just to kind of take us into the actual show itself, I mean, talking about that kind of inmates running the asylum thing, I think that really came to a head during the Matt Hardy incident. So, obviously, people have presumably have seen the match, but Hardy takes quite a nasty bump, but hits his head on the concrete floor. Clearly has got the signs of concussion straight away. He's barely able to stand up. Doesn't seem to know exactly where he is, to be honest, but I suppose that kind of instinct within him to carry on is there, and obviously he wants to carry on with the match, and the referees are all trying to obviously stop him from doing it. And you just think that in a competent company run by people who know professional wrestling and know the risks involved, they would have just stopped this straight away. I think the fact that they allowed this match to continue after a very short break, and the manner in which it happened, they had to climb another big scaffolding thing. You just think, at some point this is going from just bad wrestling to potentially sort of dangerous wrestling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're right, and they're not doing the performers any favors. Now, I know that WWE's labor practices are hardly anything to admire, and in fact, they're actually pretty poor, as anybody will tell you. But the thing is, whenever WWE screws something up, and just recently they sort of tried to put a clamp on their performers using third party platforms such as Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that, and we all came down hard on WWE, and rightfully so. But here you look at AEW, and Tony Khan, the guy who's running the company, comes out and says that we had a doctor look at Matt Hardy and he cleared a concussion protocol. What half-assed voodoo witch doctor kind of guy took a look at Matt Hardy, because the guy clearly wasn't okay to continue. The man was in hospital overnight, and it was pretty evident that he had a concussion. I mean, you don't care about your performers, Tony Khan. You're just as much of a money-grubbing promoter as anybody else.
Exactly, yeah. You just hope that there would have been somebody backstage with the wherewithal or the sort of the responsibility to say to Matt Hardy, like, this really isn't worth it. I mean, I think what makes it worse is the fact that you never want to see people get legitimately hurt in wrestling, but then there's some occasions where it kind of has this kind of perverse kind of positive effect on things. So like I'm thinking maybe Owen Hart dropping Stone Cold on his head in SummerSlam '97, and the fact that they had to kind of scramble that match together quickly, just get that quick sort of awkward roll up, and then just get the hell out of there. If you're gonna have to see it through, then do something like that, but don't go out there again and then climb a scaffold and put everybody at risk. You could see that Hardy was struggling to kind of get up there. He was very kind of shaky, and it's a dangerous thing to do at the best of times, especially after what had happened to him. And at the end of the day, it's a throwaway feud between two underneath guys, basically. There's no consequence to this. There's no title on the line. I know obviously they had this bullshit stipulation with if Matt Hardy lost, he'd have to leave AEW, but I'm sure fans could just put that aside and just be like, okay, fine, let's just end it here. We don't actually need a clear winner here. So yeah, it's never good to put people at risk, but especially for something as insignificant and inconsequential as this, is just really kind of rubbed me up the wrong way.
No, Dan, you don't understand. You see, when you have a loser leaves town type of stipulation, what that means is the performer must die or be left permanently paralyzed.
Well, it seems to be, yeah.
Leaving the match incomplete is just not an option. Because there are so many millions of people watching AEW.
Yeah. I just worry that, you know, because Matt Hardy, we know he's obviously, you know, he's had this history of being a quote unquote, you know, like an extreme wrestler. He's been in lots of TLC matches and everything, but you know, he's still been around long enough to, and I suppose it's difficult to say because you don't know exactly what his mind frame was at the time. Obviously, the professional in him would want to have continued the match. But you know, if he had any semblance of sense about him at that time, he should have realised, you know, he's a family man. He's certainly not at the peak of his career anymore. You know, it would have been fine for him just to sit this one out. I just worry if, like, you know, somebody like Darby Allin gets into this position, because we know how reckless he is with himself anyway. You know, so it just feels like something bad is going to happen if they don't sort of grow up, I suppose, as a company.
Yeah, I agree with you. They certainly need to you know, get their stuff together. And I just can't help but go back to Tony Khan's comments on this issue. He's sort of hand-waving this as though it's nothing to be concerned about, and it's something so severe. I mean, Matt Hardy could have been permanently paralyzed. Why would you commission this stunt, let alone let him continue? What sort of concussion protocols do you have in place that this guy is allowed to go on and finish this match? I mean, this is just coming across as such a poorly run company, and the culture they have, you know, in the workplace is also no good. It seems to almost engender this sort of recklessness, as you said.
Yeah. And again, the worst part of it all is that the product overall isn't very good either. So, you know, people are kind of putting their lives at risk for something that is just amateur and minor league overall anyway. It's really sad to see to some of these guys, you know, kind of Matt Hardy, you know, Jericho, like, end their kind of illustrious careers in AEW. I mean, and I suppose that kind of, you know, might lead us on to kind of talking about the Chris Jericho match as well, but it's just something about AEW and sort of guys like this in this moment is kind of stripping them of their dignity a little bit. I don't know if that's a bit harsh, but because I know Jericho has been a highlight for AEW since it started, but at the moment I don't really get what he's trying to get out of this personally.
Yeah, see, I was going to compare it to Michael Jordan with the Washington Wizards, because it's this legendary player on an average team. But by that point, Jordan's skill as a basketball player and his athleticism and everything had diminished. But I'm not sure that's the case with Chris Jericho. I mean, Chris Jericho is certainly still at the peak of his powers as a performer. It's just that he's part of a company that's putting on a very, very substandard product, as we said. And Dan, in terms of quality, I'm not sure that AEW is better than TNA was during its time on Spike TV. It's just that it's been marketed as this alternative to WWE, which is why it's, you know, garnering traction.
Yeah. And there's been this big fanfare about the fact that they've managed to get 1 million viewers for an episode of Dynamite. I mean, like, it's an episode immediately after a pay-per-view, so you would expect people to tune in. And I know obviously there's NBA going on at the moment as well, but it just, like, in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that big an achievement, really. It goes back to what we said before. You know, it's not exactly like they're bringing in new or lapsed fans back into wrestling. It's just the fact that people who watch WWE and have such low standards over there kind of come over to AEW, and this is the kind of standards they expect anyway. So, you know, it's just short change. You know, that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, and just like WWE, AEW also obviously has moments that can entertain you, but it's just this very cultish sort of vibe that's sustaining this product at the moment. I'm not sure how else to describe it, but that's really it. I mean, once you cast an objective eye on the AEW product, there's nothing special about it. They have a bunch of wrestlers who have no sense of in-ring psychology. They have mediocre creative. they cut a bunch of shoot promos with the insider innuendo, which nobody cares about anymore. We're done with all of that crap. CM Punk's hit promo was 9 years ago now. We just want to watch entertaining storylines. And just like TNA, they sign every WWE cast off there is. So what about this product is meant to be revolutionary? There's nothing. They even have a world champion who's a poor man, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And that guy was popular 25 years ago.
Yeah. I the whole story arc with Jon Moxley is really starting to get to me as well at the moment. Like, I was a big fan of Dean Ambrose when he first came to WWE. I know, like, he had a bit of a career before that, but who cares about CZW? He was Dean Ambrose in the Shield. I thought, this guy's got charisma. This guy could be a potential, like, pretty big star for the WWE at some point. Comes over to AEW after, I guess, you could say he was being underused in WWE. I think that's probably fair to say. And then initially, again, there was this fanfare of, like, it's Jon Moxley, he's unchained now, he's going to do what he wants. Problem is, he doesn't have the wrestling brain to do what he wants.
Exactly. And I think that's true for so many people in this company.
Yeah. It's like, you're unchaining them, but what you're doing is unchaining a lot of mediocre talent that can't really get themselves over without, like, a proper company behind them. Jon Moxley doesn't understand, like, basic wrestling anyway. Like, I don't know, he's the most heelish babyface champion I've ever seen in my life. Like, the MJF main event with like, basically should have been the other way around. Like, MJF was clearly the babyface in this. You're, like, blood all over his face, like, fighting from the bottom. Moxley just pulls out the paradigm shift when he wasn't supposed to, and what has happened to just basic kind of good guy bad guy dynamics in wrestling? Like, I don't know.
I think their idea was just to show you that MJF could push Jon Moxley to his limits, because Jon Moxley is this all-conquering champion or whatever, but it just didn't come across like that. Jon Moxley just came across as such a heel, as you just said. It didn't work for either guy. I mean, well, I suppose it did work for MJF to an extent, but it did no favors for Jon Moxley, who is floundering as a champion.
Yeah.
No, Dan, I think the problem with Jon Moxley is, like you said, he certainly isn't a guy who can be given full creative freedom. And he certainly didn't work in the WWE environment, where they didn't see anything in him. So I don't really know where he goes, because I don't know, because it's just unfortunate for him, really.
And I think the worst part is that, because my initial thought here is to just get the title off him immediately, but I really couldn't see anyone worthy enough to give it to at the moment.
I think MJF could be a great heel champion, to be honest with you. I thought he was primed to take the title off Jon Moxley.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm still very positive on MJF. He's again one of the sort of few highlights of AEW that I tune in for. But I don't know. I don't see. And this is so kind of back to front anyway, because obviously the whole thing about wrestling is, the money's in the chase, so to speak, so you kind of, but then I kind of want to see MJF chasing the title, but then that should make him a babyface in my mind, but he's been brilliant as a heel, so I can't, it's weird to kind of know what to do. Like, maybe you could just give him the title straight away, but then you have the problem of whether there's enough kind of good baby faces for him to face. I quite like him chasing the championship belt, if that makes sense. Even though I shouldn't, because he's a heel. I don't know if this is my level of confusion with the product at the moment. Anyway.
No, I agree with you, Dan. I think AEW does need a heel world champion with a bunch of babyface challengers coming after him. But again, I mean, let's see where they go, because I don't know if you can, because I think you can definitely go back to an MJF and Moxley program, although it looks like they're going with Lance Archer next. And Lance Archer isn't exactly the second coming of The Rock, so let's see how that goes.
This is another, and again, this may just be me being a bit of a nitpicker, but I think there's too many title contenders in AEW. Like, it seems like every pay-per-view there has to be someone who comes out of it with a title shot. I think it just really discredits the belt. I think WWE are guilty of it as well. That the belt is defended too many times. I'm not advocating for a Brock Lesnar situation where you don't see the champion for months and months, but it shouldn't be defended at every pay-per-view, and there shouldn't always be this new challenger all the time. So like Lance Archer suddenly getting a title shot out of nowhere just seems really kind of like unordered and sort of chaotic as well. It proves that there's no kind of structure and no kind of long-term planning going on.
Yeah. I don't know how far ahead they've planned to. I have a feeling that they're sort of looking to do a John Moxley Kenny Omega program for the world title at some point down the road, but I don't know if they have any idea how they want to get there.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, Dan, who the hell puts this stuff together? Like, who is booking all of this crap? Is it Tony Khan?
Well, I mean, you drew the parallel already with WCW. That maybe that is the problem. There's just too many cooks spoiling the broth. Like, and you've got like, yeah. So go on.
No. Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I say you've got too many cooks spoiling the broth, but then you've got like the wrestlers themselves obviously involved in it. You've got obviously the Young Bucks. I don't know what position they hold in the company, but it's pretty high. And Cody and Omega, and I just get the feeling that there's not that one figure within that's really kind of driving things. Maybe.
Right. And they're against hiring writers or anything like that. So, I mean, I guess we'll see where it goes, but. As of right now, this is a very poor quality product. I mean, it's we have to be honest.
Yeah, I think things are getting so bad at the moment that I kind of like the prospect of a John Moxley Kenny Omega title feud. At least it's something. Like it's not something I would look forward to necessarily, but it would kind of give the company that bit of structure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're going to continue with Moxley and MJF because the promo that MJF hit on Dynamite seems to suggest that sort of dynamic was going to continue, maybe. But they need that kind of long-term stability going on, and I think Omega and Moxley could be the two guys just to kind of cement things a little bit. I know that you're not exactly a massive fan of Kenny Omega, so I'm sure you're relishing this opportunity, but it's the best we've got at the moment.
I don't understand what a Kenny Omega John Moxley feud would even look like. Neither of these guys can sink their teeth into a promo to save their lives. So what are these guys going to do to promote the match? Is Kenny Omega going to bring out a broomstick while the other guy brings out like a barbed wire baseball bat and just smack themselves for like 4 weeks on television? I don't really know.
But then there's plenty of wrestling fans out there that would love that.
Well, I mean, at the end, after All Out, I mean, Kenny Omega was making references to bringing back his cleaner persona. Well, fantastic. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
The problem isn't whether or not you're the cleaner. The problem is you don't know what the fuck professional wrestling is.
I mean, you've touched on this already. I'm so tired of this whole elite storyline bullshit. Like, it really, really needs to end now. I don't care. I couldn't care less. Like, who is splitting up from who and who's mad at who. It just all seems very just like playground childhood nonsense at the moment, and it's just and they're kind of riding on the fact that they've been together as this kind of elite group for a long time. But then people who are just coming into AEW are like, I didn't watch New Japan, I don't really get the history behind this. You just seem to be this like bunch of, I want to say semi-talented wrestlers that are all bickering with each other. It's like, I don't know. I think personally Hangman Page needs to get as far away from them as possible, because I really think he's got something in him that could really give him a good sort of singles push. But like the promo he cut with Tony Schiavone, like the interview that he did with Tony Schiavone last week, was just like, what have they done to the character? They've already ruined it. And I'm just so fed up of the whole elite. Anything to do with the elite, I just want it to end.
No, Dan, the thing that gets me with the elite is that they make all of these inside references on television to there being the elite web series or digital series or whatever you want to call it. Now, the problem is, I can barely sit through the Dynamite television show. I am not going to go watch these buffoons for another half an hour on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. That speaks to the problem overall, isn't it? It's like they've got this kind of very insular like bunch of wrestling fans that they know that anything they do, basically, the wrestling fans will just lap it up, with no serious intention to kind of grow themselves into a credible kind of global company.
Yeah, that's what it is, and they're just living off the goodwill that they have with this, with this group of fans. Well, I mean, I suppose that is a good thing, but as somebody who wants a good television show and good pay-per-views and things like that, it just doesn't work. Like, they're just living off this weird fanaticism, and it sort of drives me crazy.
Is there anything positive we can talk about in the show? Like, I mean, would you say that the main event was the match of the night, or was there anything else that you liked in the show?
Well, I mean, there were the two. I think the main event and the co-main event were the only two possible matches that they had on the entire card. If we want to call it the match of the night, we could do so, but it's nothing spectacular. I mean, it was an average match. I mean, you see better than that every week, really.
Yeah. I'd like to just quickly nod towards the women's championship match, because Thunder Rosa is like I've been watching NWA Power for quite a while. I know it's sort of not really on anymore, but Thunder Rosa was one of the main things that I sort of tuned in for, because she is genuinely a brilliant talent. And the prospect of her kind of coming to AEW, initially I was very worried, because I thought she just basically jumped ship and was going to join as a full-time competitor, but when I realised that it was like a championship versus championship thing, I was kind of relieved, because NWA, that's where she should stay. But then I expected a lot more from the match, even though the match wasn't terrible. What did you think of Thunder Rosa? Did you know anything about her before, or?
Oh no, Dan, I knew that she was the NWA Women's Champion and everything, and they were trying to do this feud to determine the best, quote unquote. But I wasn't blown away by the match. I mean, there were a few nice transitions and counters and stuff like that, and it was smoother than most of the matches on the card, just because it wasn't the somersault tope con hero, tope suicida type fare that we see from most AEW matches. So I did appreciate that they actually did a wrestling match, but I appreciated it. I expected a little bit more.
Yeah, like I say, the match was a bit of a letdown, but that was one of the things I wanted to kind of tune in for, because I know what a talent she is, and I've seen her talk a few during the whole lockdown thing, and NWA did this sort of series of sort of shows where like the wrestlers would kind of talk from their own home and kind of talk about various issues, and Thunder Rosa just comes across as a very kind of mature, very kind of well put together wrestler, and I think that if she ever maybe did get onto the the WWE platform, I think she could do a lot of like good stuff with them. But I don't know how much she's going to feature in AEW going forward, but I hope it's not too much, because I don't want them to ruin another person that has promise behind them. Yeah.
Dan, what do you think about Hikaru Shida?
I don't know. I can't tell yet whether, because I don't think she's living up to the promise that I think a lot of people had about her, and I think maybe she just hasn't got much to work with in the AEW women's roster, maybe. But from watching what she can do, and especially this match here, like the little glimpses of what she can do, she's obviously a very talented wrestler, and I think she would do really well to face competitors like Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, people like that. But in AEW, I don't really think she's going to get very far until they actually sort out that division.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They've done a pretty poor job with the women's division, and surprise, surprise, who's in charge of the women's division? It's Kenny Omega.
Well, yeah, it's just very telling that they had to do this, and basically reach out to another company and say, hey, let's do a champion, let's do a match between our promotions, because we've just got no one else to really kind of pose a legitimate threat to our champion at the moment. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, Kenny Omega has the exact opposite of the Midas touch. He has the Kenny touch, wherein everything he touches turns to shit.
I know. I just, I mean, again, you know, and I always go back to this, and you know, I've been maybe like a more of a defender of Kenny Omega on this show than you have, I think, but that is really quickly running out. Like, you know, I again really like some of the stuff he did on New Japan, but it's just been too long ago now where, like, clearly if he's in a situation where he's against somebody who knows what they're doing, or he's being managed by somebody who knows what they're doing, then Kenny Omega could be like a genuinely kind of good talent. But you give Kenny Omega to Triple H for a few years and just let Triple H coach him and sort of get him to that kind of credible stage. I'm not saying you're not gonna have another Stone Cold on your hands, but you could have another Chris Jericho on your hands, I think, if they kind of did enough work on him. But left to his own devices, this is what we get.
I think that's high praised, and you're comparing him to Chris Jericho.
No, I'm not now in his current form, but I'm saying if with the right tutelage and with a lot of work, and I stress a lot of work, he could get to that level. But because he's, yeah.
I mean, I kind of see him as more of Steve Blackman, except he has the ego of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Okay, maybe let me maybe kind of pedal back on that. Maybe not a Chris Jericho, but you could maybe have like another RVD on your hands, maybe. Which again is high praise. You know?
That's true. Well, I mean, we are shitting on AEW for misusing a bunch of talent, and WWE have Samoa Joe as the lead announcer on Monday Night Raw, when he's perhaps the best promo in the company.
Yeah. So Samoa Joe is really kind of reminding me of like a younger version of Taz, like, cause, you know, like Taz was like a credible kind of name in ECW for a while, and then he kind of got turned into a commentator, and now it's a similar sort of career trajectory for Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
Dear. So what did you think of the introduction of the man that we all know as Rusev into AEW? Do you think he's gonna bring some sweeping changes to the products that would make everything okay again? Or?
So Dan, as we said, I think they've picked up too many WWE cast-offs. Like, I don't think I'm not going to call him Matt Cardona. I'm going to call him Zack Ryder. I don't really care. I don't think a person like that adds anything to your roster. But Miro, formerly known as Rusev, is genuinely a talented guy. He has a creative mind and he's pretty charismatic. And I think he was grossly underutilized in WWE. So I think he is a quality pickup for AEW just because he's such a great personality. And I thought his debut was just fine, and I hopefully he can do something entertaining on the show. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not expecting him to be the world champion or anything like that, but hopefully we'll see more of his personality and less of the sort of mindless brute that he played on WWE television for long periods.
See, I'm so kind of surprised by that, because I'm kind of the opposite. I think that the kind of initial kind of way I think he's going to be portrayed, I think is going to do him a lot of damage, really. Like, I don't see what the problem is with him just coming in as basically the second incarnation of that Bulgarian brute character, because AEW needs some more of that kind of like straightforward, like no nonsense, like badass character in it, and we don't need another guy whose sort of main claim to fame is the fact that he uses Twitch all the time. Like, there's just something about his entrance. I just thought, like, I'm kind of happy to see him, but the way they're packaging him at the moment isn't really filling me with much hope. I don't know, and the storyline he seems to be coming in with this Kip Sabian marriage nonsense, like, I don't really get it. You can be your kind of yourself in the real world, and you can, he's in AEW now, so he's allowed to actually have a Twitch account. But from an in-ring point of view, I kind of just want the Bulgarian brute back, personally. I don't know.
I suppose that's fair, but I just think that Bulgarian brute kind of thing is just a bit one-dimensional, which is personally why I wasn't that big a fan of it anyway. But I suppose you're right. That is where there is an opening on the AEW roster. Maybe somebody like Lance Archer could fill it. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but you know, I'm willing to see what happens with Rusev. It's going to take me a while for him to call him Miro. So yeah, I don't care. I'm calling him Rusev. Because you know this isn't a Zack Ryder situation.
I think it also goes back to what we said about the inmates running the asylum, and I think Miro, aka Rusev, just wants an opportunity to sort of spread his wings.
Yeah, which is fair enough, and I think people look at him as someone who probably was underutilized in WWE. Like, it's different with Zack Ryder because, you know, like, he was never going to get anywhere anyway, even if he was given full reign. But yeah, someone like Rusev, you thought, you know, he should really have been a world champion at some point already. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they package him right and they give him the right sort of gimmick, then, you know, why not just have him win the world title, because there's no one else at the moment. So
yeah, I suppose so. Perhaps he has that sort of potential. I mean, but the way he's debuted, I don't know. I don't see him getting to that position for at least for a very long time.
Yeah. Just to, I know I'm going slightly off topic here, but just to kind of round off this discussion, if you like, of AW, who would you say is, if I was to say who's more overrated, Kenny Omega, Young Bucks, or Jon Moxley, who would you say at this point?
No, I mean, for me, it's Kenny Omega, just because I think people have this misconception that he is the best professional wrestler in the world or something like that, and I don't think that's the case. I think, as you said, when he works with somebody more talented like Okada or Tanahashi, he comes across as this otherworldly talent, but in reality he's very mediocre, and his mind for professional wrestling is suboptimal, really.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think with the Young Bucks, you know, I dislike them quite strongly and passionately, but, you know, if nothing else, you can say that I guess they have revolutionized wrestling for better or worse in a way. Not from an in-ring point of view. They're basically just doing some kind of bad cosplaying of the Rockers, but like with none of the talent or kind of forethought or anything. But the way that they, I guess, kind of got themselves over without the kind of the help or the assistance of the WWE platform, I think was quite admirable. You know, I'm someone who pretty much has only really watched WWE for most of his kind of wrestling kind of watching experiences, and you know, I knew who the Young Bucks were without ever having to watch anything like New Japan or anything like that. So I've got to give them credit for that. What they do in the ring is just complete garbage, and I don't want to see any more of it. But
I agree.
Yeah, I think Kenny Omega probably, I'd say is probably the most overrated.
Jon Moxley, I mean, he has a good delivery on his promos, and there is some charisma there. It's just that he's never been in the right environment for somebody to harness his talents.
Yeah, I think his highlight for me was probably his feud with Seth Rollins just after the Shield broke up. I think that was probably the best that we got from the Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley character, personally.
Yeah, that's probably it. That's when it looked like he was the next big thing in WWE, but he just never took off.
And even then, he was doing some pretty, like, silly things, I guess. I'm like, you know, like putting like explosives in Seth Rollins' Money in the Bank briefcase or whatever it was, like, you know, but it kind of worked on a level because there was just
because he was still outwitting the heel.
Exactly, yeah, and it's, you know, it's like the 2000s version of the whole like like babyface outwitting the sort of the powerful heel, which kind of works on a certain level, but that's pretty much as good as we're ever going to get, I think, unfortunately. Again, there's just nobody in AEW at the moment I can see him having a decent enough feud with, which is, yeah, kind of sad when you think about it.
No, I mean, Dan, I do sort of appreciate that they're trying to make you believe in Moxley as a babyface champion. Like, I at least appreciate the thought process behind him. I mean, he's not like an insignificant comedy wrestler that doesn't matter like so many people on that roster. Like, but I just don't think they're nailing it at all.
I think what they are doing right, I think, is they're kind of keeping him separated from the rest of the kind of quivering mess that's kind of underneath him. So like he's typically only really on screen when he's cutting a promo against the person that he's supposed to be feuding with. Like you don't really see him in these kind of random like 6-man tag matches for no reason or purpose. So at least they're kind of doing that right with him. They're kind of giving him that kind of aura of the champion. Whereas everyone else just seems to be kind of in this kind of endless cycle of 8-man, 10-man, 12-man tag team matches.
Do you think they see him as their biggest star?
Yeah, I think so. Well, it depends who you mean by they, because again, the guys that are actually in charge of the company, like the Young Bucks, probably see themselves as their biggest stars. Omega probably sees himself as their biggest star. I think Tony Khan.
Kenny Omega thinks he's God's gift to humanity.
Yeah, exactly. That's just on another level entirely. But yeah, I think Tony Khan and some of the other executives, I think, probably recognise that Moxley at the moment is probably their best chance of making some actual kind of money. With MJF, following close behind, and probably soon will be kind of overtaking him, I would have thought.
Dan, I think that's fair enough. But I really think, speaking of the Elite, for me, my favourite performer in the Elite, like as you said, I think Hangman Page also has potential. But for me, the guy they've really underutilized is Cody, because Cody is a tremendous performer. Cody actually knows how pro wrestling works. He has a great mind for the business. He's not a product of all of this flippy crap. And I think he could be so much more than he actually is. I get that they wanted to establish their secondary title through him, but I still feel he should have been introduced into... He should have been more of a constant in the main event picture, because I still think the best days of AEW were when he was feuding with Chris Jericho.
Yeah, I probably agree with that, actually. I quite liked the stuff he's been doing with the TNT Championship, but I think he's maybe just selling himself really short. So I think maybe he's worried about coming across as another Jeff Jarrett, like that kind of the guy in charge that always puts himself into these title feuds. And I mean, yes, if that were to happen and he was doing that to the extent that Jeff Jarrett was doing, people would soon get tired of that. But yeah, to kind of write yourself out of ever being able to fight for the championship again just seems like shooting yourself in the foot straight away. And yeah, I really hope they kind of find a way of writing themselves out of that little corner that they've put themselves in, because yeah, he should be in more world title feuds going forward, because like you say, he's got that credibility, he's got that wrestling brain. He's the son of Dusty Rhodes, like he knows what he's doing, but he's just not given enough kind of scope to do it, I guess.
Yeah, that's definitely fair enough. But do you see him being an AEW lifer?
I think so. I think for as long as AEW is a thing, I think Cody will always be there. It might be different if the worst happens, or well, the worst it depends on your view. But if the worst happens and AEW falls apart, I don't know what would happen after that. But I don't know.
I suppose his family is also so ingrained into AEW now that it'd probably be hard for him to leave. But I'd really love to see him do his thing elsewhere.
Yeah, but where though? Really, I mean, I'd quite like to see him, because I know that they've already had the match at All In with Nick Aldis for the NWA champion. I'd like to see that happen again, because that was quite good. But I don't know, other than going back to WWE, I don't really know where he would want to go at this point.
I think he should go back to WWE.
Yeah, but then do you think Vince is really going to forgive him and put him in credible positions, or is he just going, I think
that's a good question. I think Triple H would do well with him.
I think they're going to have to dust off the old polka dot signet thing they give to his dad.
Cody Rhodes comes back as Stardust.
Yeah, exactly. I know this has been a very AEW heavy episode, but I just got to ask you, our prospect of the latest free agent in wrestling joining AEW. Can you ever see Brock Lesnar joining AEW?
No, I don't think so, Dan. I think it's going to be a situation where he comes back to WWE when Vince McMahon feels like he needs to give the product another shot in the arm. Although I think he should I don't think he should appear on WWE television for a long time, 2-3 years at least, because um he's because his shtick is just so tired and worn out at this point, really. Um,
Yeah.
It could be interesting to see him see him on AEW, just because, like you said, they just don't have that sort of badass, no nonsense heel on that roster. So he would certainly fill a very he could certainly, there is potential for him to do something interesting on AEW, but I just don't see it happening. It's also a massive investment, which I don't know if they'd be willing to do in this climate.
I mean, yeah, it's amusing me that you're even sort of humouring this, to be honest. Like, I think just the idea of Brock Lesnar and AEW, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I know, it's like Lionel Messi is not happy with his Barcelona contract at the moment, but it would literally be like him leaving Barcelona and joining, like, I don't know, Plymouth Argyle or something.
Oh wow, we're really hating on AEW now. We just compared them to Plymouth Argyle.
Well, there's any American
Brock Lesnar's too big league for AEW.
Of course he is. I mean, he's like, that's the problem though. He feels too big league for anybody at the moment, even WWE. When Brock Lesnar comes back to WWE and does something with them, it kind of feels like Brock Lesnar using that platform to do his own thing. It doesn't really feel like he's properly kind of ingratiated amongst the WWE roster. I think if he did that with AEW, it would be that to a much greater extent. Because if I'm Tony Khan and I kind of have that, if it is a vague possibility of getting him to do at least one match, I would probably want to pay through the nose for it, because people are obviously going to watch it. But I have no idea who he would fight.
How awesome would it be to watch Brock Lesnar squash Kenny Omega in 2 minutes?
Well, I mean, there's a number of candidates that I would love him to face just for that very reason, but Kenny Omega would obviously be the top of the list there. But like, can you even imagine what? I don't even know if Brock Lesnar would even know what to do with fighting Kenny Omega. Like who would put that match together? Like, who would have the say over the booking? I think it's fascinating.
It would clearly be Brock Lesnar. He'd walk in there saying, "I am going to suplex this motherfucker 10 times, hit him with an F5, and then pin him."
Can you just see imagine Omega there saying, "Okay, fine, but can I at least get like 5 minutes of my sort of twinkle toes dancing around the ring in?" And he'd be like, "Absolutely not."
You will suffer.
Yeah, if you want to take 5 German suplexes rather than 10, you're gonna have to pay me a hell of a lot of money. Yeah.
Kenny Omega. He never ceases to entertain. Well, actually, he never entertains. That's the problem. That's my mistake.
I'm really struggling with it, because Jericho against Lesnar would be, in a really weird way, the most sort of convincing match they've got there. But even then, it just seems like so kind of ludicrous. There's nobody else in there. I mean, John Moxley, like, just memories of that awful WrestleMania match the two of them had, where it was just basically a non-event. Really can't think of anybody else that Lesnar would even want to face here. Doesn't matter how much money they pay him personally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think those are the only two candidates who could really have a match with Brock Lesnar. Maybe you could have Cody Rhodes as the babyface fighting from underneath, but you're right, they just don't have anybody on the roster who could hang with him.
That might work, actually. Yeah, like maybe a special attraction Cody versus Lesnar. Like, so especially if they kind of did it where Lesnar was kind of coming in as this sort of all-conquering person who's just going to basically walk all over things, and Cody was that kind of like the defender of the company, like fighting for its honor. Like, maybe that would be quite a compelling story to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a stretch.
It would be even better if Kenny Omega were fighting for the honor of the company and Lesnar squashed him because the company has no honor, but
yeah,
that's another story for another day. Dan, all of the AEW fans listening to us aren't going to like us anymore after this episode, I think.
Oh, I'm sure they stopped listening about 45 minutes ago.
They probably thought when we were criticizing the way they handled the Matt Hardy concussion, they probably thought that Matt Hardy's duty was to give up his life for the AEW product.
Yeah, we should have known better, really. Well, I mean, if you want to kind of add some balance to the episode, we could maybe talk briefly about WWE. But to be honest, and again, this is just going to make me look like an AEW hater, but there's actually quite a few good things I'm quite liking from WWE. I don't mean to be this sort of black and white about it, but especially a few things on SmackDown that I'm actually really enjoying at the moment. I think there's a lot of legs to the particularly the Roman Reigns storyline, and also the Bayley and Sasha Banks storyline. It's WWE, so I know that they're going to find a way to mess it all up eventually, but I'm enjoying for what it is now.
No, I agree with you. I think they've handled the Roman Reigns heel turn quite well thus far. I think Jey Uso is also a very interesting choice for his first title defense. It also helps that he's sort of the lesser known Uso, because Jimmy's at least gotten like a bunch of exposure on Total Divas, and just in general because of his relationship with Naomi and stuff like that. But yeah, this is it. This is the heel turn we've waited so long for, and I think Paul Heyman is a great manager to pair him up with. And so far things are going well. But as you said, it's WWE, so they're going to mess it up eventually.
Yeah, I think but it is the heel turn that we've been waiting for a while. I think they're sort of like nodding at it, I guess. But for me, I kind of want them just to go the whole way and just kind of tell the story of like Roman had to take time off because of the whole COVID situation, because of his kind of medical history, and the fact that he was kind of forgotten about and cast aside. That could be a really compelling story to tell, and I think if they go like the full way with that, I think I would really appreciate that actually as a sort of a character arc. And again, yeah, Paul Heyman is a perfect person to kind of tell that story as well.
Oh, absolutely. And there are just so many ways they could go with this, which is why in typical WWE fashion, they're probably going to find a way to screw it up. They're probably going to take the least interesting avenue.
Yeah, but I quite like, again, I like what they're doing at the moment. I like Heyman's role in this, because he's not he's not necessarily that kind of the obnoxious kind of advocate like he was for Lesnar. He's kind of a bit more of a kind of an underneath sort of member of staff almost for Roman Reigns, and I think what they're trying to tell with Roman, I think is working really well. It's basically like all the things that fans have been accusing him of, like put into a character now. Like he's entitled, he fights when he wants to, he can come back after months of being away and just come into a title match, and when you do that as a heel, it works because that's the story you're telling. It doesn't work when you're a babyface and you're trying to get the guy over. It's really, really working for me at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. Roman Reigns is sort of carrying himself just like a mafia boss, and Paul Heyman is sort of his consigliere as opposed to being the obnoxious advocate. I like the cadence with which these guys are delivering their promos too. It's sort of it's sort of this subtle melody, and they aren't shouting at the top of their lungs and everything. It works wonderfully well. They're just projecting on another level.
Yeah. And
I just love the way they handled the tag match with Jey Uso as well, because Roman Reigns didn't come out for most of the entire match, and he just came in and he hit the spear and took the credit for it. I love the way he did it, where he just has enough maneuverability not to turn on him right away.
And again, it's playing to that that kind of initial kind of concern that people had. Like people have been going on about it for years with John Cena. The typical guy at the top of WWE typically isn't like a move guy. He doesn't put on 5-star matches all the time. And I suppose this incarnation of Roman Reigns' character is he doesn't actually have to. Like all he needs to do literally is just turn up towards the end and like hit a big move and win. And like that's fine. That works. There's no need to sort of portray him as something he isn't, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What you thought of what you think of the whole dynamic with Alexa Bliss and the Fiend at the moment? Do you think there's anything in that?
I don't know. Could we? I think they are heading towards some sort of alliance or storyline between the two of them, just because she started using the Sister Abigail as a finish now. So I don't really know where this could go. I mean, is she going to be his manager or something like that? Because I would have thought that was something that would have worked a lot better with the Fiend as the heel champion or anything like that. But now Roman Reigns has taken all of the oxygen on SmackDown for himself, because he's such a compelling character and he's clearly the main attraction on that show. So I don't really know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think as well the women's division. I think this Bayley and Sasha storyline that I think for many years people have been waiting for it to come to some kind of a conclusion. And I think we're starting to get that way. I think it was really well done, that the Bayley sort of beat down of Sasha Banks, and the promo she cut last week on SmackDown I thought was really good. It kind of explained everything really well. It kind of made you believe in what's going on. And I really hope. I mean, if for me, this match needs to happen at a WrestleMania. I would advocate for keeping Sasha away probably until the Rumble, maybe, and then kind of have a sort of come back as an entrant and maybe kind of take Bayley out, and then lead to some kind of a Mania program. My fear is that they're going to just do what WWE normally does and just have the match at Clash of Champions and just sort of kill it before it's even started. But there's a lot of legs in this.
I agree with you, Dan, but from their perspective, I don't think they'll have enough challengers for Bayley who are interesting and can hold her over until the Royal Rumble, and they'll just prematurely finish it at Clash of Champions probably.
Yeah, but I agree, but then that's kind of okay.
But as you said, she should chase Bayley until WrestleMania. That's how it should go down. Yeah.
And I'd be fine with that, a genuinely kind of compelling WrestleMania storyline is worth it at this point, even if it does mean that, Bayley's just going to be a bit of a paper champion going forward until Mania. But it's that's the main storyline. And anything that comes on with Bayley is going to be secondary to what's going on with Sasha, and they need to kind of see that through properly. But remains to be seen at this point whether they'll do it properly or not.
My money's on no.
Yeah. We need to get that bit of balance in there, because I realise now we wanted to switch over to WWE to show that we weren't just against AEW, but we've kind of been quite positive about WWE so far. I apologise to any AEW marks out there, but yeah.
I love how you apologise to them and call them AEW marks.
Well, this is what they need to hear. We've been watching wrestling a lot longer than you have.
It can be better than this.
Yeah.
You don't have to settle.
Oh, dear.
Well, but then they'd probably call us out for reviewing a time in wrestling where Mae Young gave birth to a hand, so...
Well, yes. I mean, we're skirting over a lot of the more questionable moments. But again, that stuff was very kind of tongue-in-cheek. It was very kind of minor compared to what the real stuff going on. Whereas today, Mae Young giving birth to a hand would be the fucking main event of AEW All Out.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at least that was tongue-in-cheek. Kenny Omega thinks he's painting the Sistine Chapel.
Well, Kenny Omega would have had a 40-minute wrestling match with the hand and called it the best thing.
Dave Meltzer would have given it 8 stars.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
But I don't think Dave Meltzer is an AEW mark. He's probably more like a paid shill, but...
Most probably, yeah. I'm just they need some credibility in that company somewhere. Something needs to happen, I honestly thought bringing Rusev in would give them that credibility, but already they're emphasizing the fact that he uses Twitch. I really, really don't know who gives a shit about Twitch, but do you use Twitch, and are you a Twitch user?
Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, I was a really big fan of FIFA, so I used to, watch people who stream FIFA, but that's about it. I've never streamed on Twitch or anything like that. No.
Yeah.
What, yourself?
No, I barely knew what it was until we started talking about it on the other episode.
Okay.
What video game do you think Stone Cold Steve Austin would have been into back in the late 90s if he was a Twitch user?
I couldn't even begin to answer that question. Could you imagine Stone Cold Steve Austin playing Pac-Man on his Twitch stream? Donkey Kong.
I despair.
Kenny Omega probably thinks video games are art, so.
Yeah, like I say, if he had his way, AEW would just be a live action version of Dragon Ball Z. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's his dream, I think. When he said change the world, that's really what he meant.
But Dan, how could someone so pretentious just want real life to be Dragon Ball Z at the end of the day? It doesn't make sense.
I was thinking the other day, like all the people that you meet as a wrestling fan, you meet a lot of people that kind of mock you for being into the show and think it's a load of nonsense, isn't it? Like it's all pretend, like it's all fake. And then I kind of feel like AEW is like their gift. Like this is the perfect example of what they're trying to tell me. Personally, I think AEW is going to be the death of professional wrestling. Personally, I think it's got to that stage now.
Well, Dan, I kind of look at it as glass half full. I think they're giving gymnasts an opportunity to make a good living.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's it. The WWE have always had this weird kind of relationship with like the bodybuilding world. A lot of guys have come over from one or the other, whereas AEW, it's it's gymnastics and synchronized swimming and diving.
Diving? Do you think we're going to see Neymar in an AEW ring?
They might as well. If he had more credibility than most of the guys that we have already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're saying that Brock Lesnar is too big for AEW, I mean, then Neymar is another story.
Right. Well, I think we're gonna have to put an end to this AEW bashing at some point. So, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss today? Or?
Well, I mean, I can't wait for next week when Kenny Omega paints on the canvas that is the AEW ring.
We're
getting the return of the cleaner. Oh, I can hardly wait.
I know. At least he was kind of safe and tucked away in the tag team division, but now he's being unleashed on the singles division. It's like, God knows what's going to happen next.
He's being unleashed on the singles division.
Yep. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
I feel like I've converted you to the right side of the Kenny Omega argument.
I know. Well, I mean, I think that we're giving you too much credit. I think Kenny Omega's done that for himself, personally.
That's fair.
Oh dear. So I guess I'm sort of aiming this at non-AEW fans, but if you've liked this episode and you want to subscribe to the channel and hear more content, then please consider doing so. Yeah, I think we're basically just going to get a lot of Jim Cornette offshoots. Basically, I think that's our intended audience at this point.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so, well, once again, it has been really, really enjoyable talking to you this week, and I really hope you have a good week going forward. Again, obviously, we say it every week, but obviously, the COVID pandemic is still going on, so, please do keep yourself safe out there, everybody, and follow the guidelines that your government is giving you. They are there for a reason, and let's hope that we get out of this thing sooner rather than later.
Yep, take care everyone, stay safe.
Thank you then, bye.